They weren't extravagant, but they made sure no one ever went without food. These forgotten meals, often referred to as the poor man's dinner, were cobbled together with determination, creativity, and whatever ingredients could be found in the pantry. They nourished families during some of the toughest times in history. The Great Depression, wartime rationing, and economic struggles that tested the resilience of the American people. These meals are more than just about surviving. They're a testament to ingenuity, community, and the ability to make something meaningful with almost nothing. Today, with grocery costs climbing and hectic schedules, these modest dishes may be just what your budget and calendar need. Cream chip beef on toast, SOS. If you have a military veteran in your family, chances are you've heard of SOS, which stands for Same Old Stuff, though some might use a more colorful name for it. Cream chip beef on toast became a staple during World War II, when meat was rationed and dried beef was abundant. The military served it so frequently that soldiers began to make it at home after returning from the war. This dish is incredibly simple to make. Just dried beef in a creamy white sauce poured over toast. The dried beef rehydrates in the sauce, and before you know it, you have a hearty meal that costs almost nothing. What made this dish endure wasn't just its affordability, but its ability to fill you up and keep you going all day. Back in the 1940s and 50s, a full meal of this would cost only a few cents per serving, becoming a comfort food passed down through generations. Many people I've spoken to recall their grandparents preparing it on chilly mornings before school or work. It's one of those dishes that carries not only flavor, but also cherished memories. Depression-era egg drop soup. When eggs were one of the few proteins many families could afford, creativity became key. Depression-era egg drop soup was a product of necessity, perfected over time. Unlike the Chinese version you might find at restaurants, the American version was much simpler. You'd start with whatever broth you could muster, sometimes just hot water with salt, and perhaps a bit of onion if you were lucky. Slowly, a beaten egg would be poured into the hot liquid, creating a quick, warming dish that provided nourishment when little else was available. While stirring, the eggs would form delicate ribbons throughout the broth. The warmth of the soup, combined with the protein from the eggs, made it an incredibly affordable meal. What's truly remarkable is how this humble technique transcended cultural boundaries. From Italy's stracciatella to Greece's avgolemono, the concept of stretching eggs in broth has helped sustain people across the world during difficult times. And it still works today, especially when you find yourself with only a few items left in the fridge. Poor man's Stroganoff. Traditional beef stroganoff calls for tender cuts of beef and sour cream, luxuries that were often out of reach during tough times. Enter poor man's Stroganoff, which cleverly swapped expensive cuts for more affordable options like ground beef or even Bologna in leaner years. The brilliance of this dish lies in the sauce, a combination of cream of mushroom soup, and if available, a little milk or sour cream, with whatever seasonings were on hand. Served over egg noodles or even simple bread, this dish transformed basic ingredients into something special. In the 1950s, home economists actually promoted versions of this dish to help families stretch their food budgets. Campbell's Soup Company even featured similar recipes on their labels, knowing that affordable, hearty meals were in high demand. Today, this remains a beloved comfort food that's both budget-friendly and satisfying. Bread and milk. Sometimes, the simplest meals carry the most meaning. Bread and milk. A piece of torn bread in a bowl, topped with warm milk, sustained many children through America's toughest economic periods. Some families would add a pinch of sugar or cinnamon if they had it, turning a basic necessity into a small treat. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about making use of every last bit of food. Stale bread, which might have otherwise gone to waste, softened in the milk, ensuring that nothing went unused when every penny counted. For many older Americans, this dish remains a comforting reminder of childhood. What's fascinating is how this simple meal crossed both cultures and generations. From Italy's zuppa di latte to Britain's milk soup, variations of this dish have nourished people across the world and throughout history. Sometimes the simplest foods have the richest histories. Beans and cornbread in the American South and Appalachia. Beans and cornbread were more than just a meal. They were a way of life. Dried beans were incredibly affordable, could be stored indefinitely, and provided essential protein and fiber. Paired with cornbread made from locally ground corn, this combination became a cornerstone of survival during the hardest times. The beauty of beans and cornbread lay in its versatility. Pinto beans, navy beans, black-eyed peas, whatever was on hand could form a base. The beans would simmer all day, perhaps with a ham hock or bacon end if you were fortunate, or just salt and pepper if you weren't. Cornbread was the perfect complement, requiring only cornmeal, a bit of fat, and some baking soda. Together, they created a complete protein that could fuel hard physical labor. Even today, this combination remains a cultural staple and a budget-friendly meal, costing just a few dollars to feed a family. Potato soup. Before fancy loaded potato soups became a restaurant favorite, simple potato soup was a lifesaver. Potatoes have always been affordable, filling, and nutritious, a trifecta that made them invaluable during hard economic times. The most basic version of this soup required nothing more than potatoes, water, salt, and perhaps an onion. If milk was available, it would be added to enrich the flavor. As the potatoes cooked, they would naturally break down, thickening the broth without the need for flour or cream. What made potato soup special was its adaptability. A bit of bacon grease for flavor in good times, just salt and pepper when money was tight. This flexibility made it a cornerstone of frugal cooking, passed down from Irish immigrants in the 1800s through the Great Depression and beyond. Even today, a pot of potato soup remains one of the most cost-effective ways to feed a family for days. Rabbit stew. When times were especially tough, particularly in rural America, people turned to hunting for food. Rabbit became a crucial resource during the Depression and wartime rationing because it was plentiful, reproduced quickly, and could even be raised in urban backyards. Rabbit stew made the most of this lean meat, stretching it with whatever vegetables were available. This humble stew helped feed families when other sources of protein were scarce, proving that resourcefulness could turn a simple animal into a nourishing meal. Typically, potatoes, carrots, and onions, if available, were used. The slow, gentle cooking transformed these humble ingredients into something rich and satisfying. What made this dish truly special was how it connected people to older traditions of self-sufficiency. Even today, many rural families have handed down recipes for rabbit stew that have remained unchanged for generations. While it might seem unusual to those in modern urban environments, rabbit meat continues to be one of the most sustainable and affordable sources of protein, something our ancestors understood well during tough times. Bologna gravy and biscuits. When meat was hard to come by or too expensive, bologna became the affordable alternative that kept families fed. Bologna gravy and biscuits took this humble lunch meat and turned it into a hearty dinner by creating a gravy from fried bologna, flour, milk, and drippings. The magic happened when the bologna was fried until crispy, creating a flavorful base that infused the entire dish. The rendered fat was used to make a roux, then milk was added to create a creamy gravy, poured over homemade biscuits or even just plain bread. In the 1940s and 50s, as many families struggled to recover from the financial strain of the war, dishes like this helped stretch food budgets. A single pound of bologna could feed a family of 4 in this way, something that would be impossible if served as sandwiches alone. It's a testament to the creativity that necessity often brings. Dandelion salad. Before grocery stores were as common as they are now, people knew that food could be found all around them, even in their own yards. Dandelion greens, now often sprayed with herbicides, were once highly valued as the first fresh greens of spring. They offered essential nutrients after months of relying on preserved foods. A simple dandelion salad made with young greens, a bit of bacon grease or oil, vinegar, and hard-boiled eggs, if available, provided necessary vitamins and minerals at absolutely no cost. Parents would send children out to gather these greens, teaching them how to identify the plants and choose the best leaves. What's truly remarkable is the nutritional power of these so-called weeds. Dandelion greens contain more vitamin A than carrots and more vitamin C than tomatoes. During the Great Depression and times of wartime rationing, this free food source helped keep people healthy when fresh vegetables were unaffordable. Hot water pie, sometimes known as depression pie or vinegar pie. This extraordinary dessert appeared when traditional pie ingredients were either unavailable or too costly. The filling was made by carefully balancing water, sugar, flour, and vinegar with spices if they were on hand, cooked until it thickened and poured into a simple crust. The wonder of this pie was its ability to create something out of almost nothing. The vinegar provided the tangy acidity usually found in fruit, while the careful cooking process gave it a texture similar to custard. In an era when treats were scarce, this pie was a source of joy at minimal cost. Historical cookbooks from the 1930s feature many variations of this recipe, demonstrating how widespread it became during the Depression. Regional versions also emerged. Some added cinnamon, others vanilla, if they could afford it. Each family adapted the recipe based on what they had, creating their own tradition from scarcity. Fried bologna sandwiches. Bologna has long been considered the working person's meat, affordable, long-lasting, and versatile. But when a family needed to make it feel special, they'd fry it. The simple act of frying bologna transformed it completely. The edges would crisp and curl, the flavor deepened, and suddenly, an ordinary sandwich became something irresistible. During the mid-20th century, fried bologna sandwiches became a lunchtime staple for blue-collar workers and schoolchildren alike. The beauty lay in its simplicity, just bread, fried bologna, and perhaps a spread of mustard or mayonnaise if available. Some people would cut a slit or an X in the center of the bologna to prevent it from bubbling up while frying, a trick passed down through generations. What made this dish endure wasn't just its low cost, but its undeniable deliciousness. Even as many families saw their incomes rise, the fried bologna sandwich remained a cherished comfort food, connecting people to their roots and fond childhood memories. Hambone soup. Nothing demonstrated the waste not, want not philosophy better than Hambone soup. After enjoying a holiday ham, often the only big meat purchase many families could afford, the bone, with bits of meat still attached, became the base for meals that could feed a family for days. The ham bone would simmer with dried beans, peas, or whatever vegetables were available, creating a rich broth infused with a smoky flavor. This humble dish was a testament to the ingenuity of those who had to make the most of every scrap of food. It wasn't just about making something out of leftovers. It was about preserving every ounce of nourishment to keep the family going through hard times. The small bits of meat would fall off during the slow cooking process, distributing throughout the soup. This method turned what might have been discarded into the star ingredient of a new meal. Not only was this practice economical, but it was also incredibly nutritious. The long simmering of the bone released calcium and other minerals, while the marrow enriched the broth with vital nutrients. Our ancestors instinctively understood what modern science now confirms. Bone broth contains compounds that promote overall health. Cornmeal mush. Before box cereals became the norm, many Americans started their day with cornmeal mush, a simple porridge made by cooking cornmeal in water or milk until it thickened. What made this dish extraordinary was its versatility. It could be served hot with butter or molasses for breakfast, or cooled, sliced, and fried for dinner. Economically, it was unbeatable. Just a few cents worth of cornmeal could feed many. During the Depression, government relief programs often distributed cornmeal to struggling families because it could be stretched so effectively. For many elderly Americans today, the smell of cornmeal cooking still brings back powerful childhood memories. Interestingly, this humble dish ties into global food traditions. From Italy's polenta to the South's grits and Romania's mama, cultures across the world found that this simple preparation of ground corn could sustain people through the toughest times. Egg gravy. When meat was hard to come by, or simply too expensive, egg gravy became a comfort food that provided protein and warmth in a way that felt indulgent rather than restrictive. The technique was simple but ingenious. Eggs were scrambled directly into a basic flour gravy, creating a rich, protein-packed sauce that could be poured over biscuits, bread, or potatoes. This dish originated in Southern cooking traditions, but spread across the country during the Depression and wartime rationing. A family with chickens could easily produce this meal, even when meat was scarce or unaffordable. Its adaptability was key. Depending on the dairy available, it could be made richer or simpler. Food historians note that egg gravy is a perfect example of how traditional cooking techniques were adapted to meet the challenges posed by scarcity. The same roux-based approach used for meat gravies was cleverly adapted for eggs, allowing families to maintain familiar food traditions even in tough times. Fried cabbage. Cabbage has long been the quiet hero of difficult times. It's inexpensive, long-lasting, nutritious, and incredibly adaptable. Fried cabbage took this humble vegetable and elevated it into a meal that felt filling and even special when meat was hard to come by. The method was simple: shredded cabbage fried in whatever fat was on hand, whether that was bacon grease saved from previous meals, lard, or even just oil. Onions, if available, were added, and the slow cooking process would caramelize the vegetables, unlocking natural sweetness and depth of flavor that seemed far more complex than the humble ingredients suggested. During the Depression and later periods of economic hardship, cabbage consumption soared because it offered abundant nutrition for very little cost. A head of cabbage could feed a family for several meals, providing much-needed vitamin C and fiber when fresh fruits and vegetables were luxuries few could afford. Poor man's meal. This classic Depression-era dish is known by various names, but its ingredients remain the same: potatoes and hot dogs, or whatever inexpensive meat was available, fried together until crispy and golden. The brilliance of this dish lay in how it turned two of the cheapest foods into something surprisingly tasty. The potatoes formed a hearty base, while small portions of meat provided essential flavor and protein. If onions were available, they added even more depth. This combination became so beloved that it moved beyond its origins as a food of necessity to become a cherished comfort dish passed down through generations. What makes this meal historically significant is how it represents the rise of processed meats, like hot dogs, in everyday American cooking. As meat production became more industrialized in the early 20th century, these affordable products began providing working-class families with an accessible protein source, fundamentally altering American food culture. Tomato gravy. In the American South and Appalachia, tomato gravy became the perfect solution to the question, what do you do when you have tomatoes but little else? This simple sauce, made from home-canned or fresh tomatoes, flour, fat, and spices, transformed humble cornbread or biscuits into a satisfying meal. During the summer months, when tomatoes were abundant, families would enjoy this gravy fresh. For the rest of the year, home-canned tomatoes became a crucial source of vitamin C and bright flavor when fresh produce was unavailable. The acidity of the tomatoes cut through the richness of the fat, creating a beautifully balanced sauce. This dish is a prime example of the remarkable regional food knowledge that developed in isolated communities, particularly in Appalachia, where geography limited access to grocery stores and outside influences. Recipes were often passed down through demonstrations rather than written instructions, preserving cultural food knowledge through generations of economic hardship. Bread pudding. Bread pudding perfectly encapsulates the core philosophy of cooking during tough times. Never waste a crumb. Stale bread that might otherwise be thrown away was repurposed into a comforting dessert by soaking it in a simple custard of eggs, milk, sugar, and cinnamon if available. What made bread pudding so special was its ability to elevate leftover bread into something that felt indulgent. During the Depression and wartime rationing, desserts were rare luxuries, so the ability to create something sweet from scraps was especially prized. The dish could be endlessly adapted based on what was available: raisins or dried fruit when possible, vanilla if it could be afforded. Bread pudding crossed class boundaries. While poor families made it out of necessity, it also appeared on the tables of the wealthy as a comforting, traditional dish. This culinary democracy helped the dish avoid the stigma that other poverty foods faced, allowing it to remain a beloved part of American cuisine even as economic conditions improved. Creamed peas on toast. Vegetables preserved creatively were essential before refrigeration and during economic downturns. Creamed peas on toast made the most of either fresh peas in season or, more commonly, canned or dried peas in the winter months. The peas were transformed into a hearty meal by combining them with a simple white sauce made from flour, fat, and milk, creating both richness and volume. This turned a small amount of peas into a dish that felt far more substantial. Served over toast, it became a complete meal that provided vegetables, dairy, and grain all in one. During World War II rationing, government pamphlets even promoted this simple yet nutritious dish, encouraging families to make the most of available food staples. Creamed peas on toast continued. This dish not only served as a way to create satisfying meals with limited ingredients, but it also illustrated the increasing importance of canned vegetables in American diets during the early 20th century. The rise of canning technology had made previously seasonal vegetables available year-round, changing how Americans ate and helping families survive when fresh food was either unaffordable or unavailable. Milk toast. Before modern medicine, home remedies passed down through generations provided comfort and healing. Milk toast was both an economical everyday food and a traditional remedy for illness. Gentle on the stomach yet nourishing enough to aid recovery, it combined buttered toast and warm, sweetened milk, offering easy-to-digest nutrition. For many elderly Americans, the dish conjures memories of being cared for during childhood illnesses. Beyond its practical benefits, milk toast represents the nurturing aspect of food traditions, how certain dishes become associated with comfort and care during difficult times. Cultural references to milk toast can be found throughout early 20th century American literature and film, underscoring its role in daily life. The term milk toast, used to describe a timid person, actually derives from this dish, which was perceived as bland and inoffensive. However, those who grew up with it might disagree with that characterization. Hobo stew. Born out of necessity during the Great Depression, hobo stew represents the epitome of adaptable cooking, where any available ingredients were thrown together to create a filling, nutritious one-pot meal. Named after the transient workers, or hobos, who perfected this approach, the stew typically included small amounts of meat, if available, combined with any vegetables that could be found, foraged, or grown. The defining characteristic of hobo stew wasn't the specific ingredients, but the technique. Everything cooked together in a single pot, often over an open fire, until the flavors melded and even the toughest ingredients became tender. This approach required minimal equipment, making it ideal for those without permanent kitchens during the hardest years of the Depression. Hobo stew is historically significant because it represents the massive population displacement during the 1930s when unemployment sent thousands of people on the road looking for work. These traveling job seekers developed cooking techniques that required minimal equipment and could make use of whatever ingredients were available or affordable in different regions. Potato pancakes. Potato pancakes became a staple across European immigrant communities in America, especially during times when meat was unaffordable. From Jewish lax to German Kartoffelpuffer to Irish boxty, variations of this dish sustained families through countless economic downturns. The brilliance of potato pancakes lies in their simplicity. Grated potatoes mixed with just enough flour and egg to bind them together, then fried until crispy. The high starch content of potatoes creates a naturally satisfying texture, while the crispy exterior makes them feel special despite their humble ingredients. During the Depression and subsequent hard times, potato pancakes allowed families to serve filling meals without meat several times a week. Records show that potato consumption surged during economic downturns, precisely because recipes like this transformed the affordable vegetable into meals that felt complete and satisfying. Water pie. Perhaps no recipe better demonstrates human creativity in the face of scarcity than water pie. When fruit and other traditional pie fillings were luxuries few could afford, inventive cooks created a silky, custard-like pie using water as the primary ingredient, along with sugar, flour, butter, and vanilla, if available. The science behind the pie is fascinating. The combination of sugar, butter, and flour thickens during baking to mimic the texture of more expensive ingredients. Depression-era cookbook collections contain numerous variations of this recipe, showing how widely it was adopted during the 1930s. What makes water pie particularly remarkable is how it represents the psychological aspect of cooking during hard times, the determination to create moments of normalcy and small pleasures, even when ingredients were severely limited. Having dessert, even one made primarily from water, maintained family traditions and provided comfort during extraordinarily difficult circumstances. Bean sandwiches. When meat for sandwiches was unaffordable, bean sandwiches provided protein and substance in a portable form. Typically made with mashed beans of any variety, seasoned simply and spread between bread, These sandwiches became a common lunch during the Depression and subsequent periods of economic hardship. The beauty of bean sandwiches was their adaptability. They could be as simple as plain mashed beans with salt and pepper, or enhanced with onions, pickle relish, or a bit of cheese when available. The texture of mashed beans created a satisfying sandwich filling that could fuel a day of hard physical labor. These sandwiches exemplified how necessity breeds innovation, turning humble beans into a versatile and affordable meal solution. Biscuits. When eggs and milk were scarce or needed for other purposes, innovative cooks discovered that mayonnaise could replace both in biscuit recipes. This clever substitution emerged during World War II rationing when dairy products were limited, but commercial mayonnaise remained more accessible. The technique is remarkably simple. Mayonnaise provides both the fat and moisture needed for tender biscuits. Mixed with just flour and a bit of baking powder, these biscuits paired with nearly any meal, adding satisfying carbohydrates to stretch small portions of other foods further. What makes this recipe historically significant is how it represents the increasing role of commercial products in home cooking during the mid-20th century. As manufactured foods became more widely available, home cooks incorporated them in creative ways to solve the persistent challenges of feeding families economically, a pattern that continues to shape American cooking today. These forgotten meals tell stories of resilience, creativity, and making the most of what's available. They remind us that good food doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. In today's world of rising grocery prices and busy schedules, these humble recipes might be exactly what we need. If you found value in rediscovering these forgotten meals, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that connects us to our shared food history. Let me know in the comments which of these dishes you remember or might try at home. Sometimes, the best solutions to today's challenges can be found in yesterday's wisdom.